If you are already growing things in an organic way, perhaps you're starting to move over to growing things more naturally, you might ask yourself, why should I bother having my soil tested? After all, it's not going to give me any information that's going to enable me to make big changes. And what I mean by this is traditionally a chemical analysis would show up excesses or deficiencies in certain minerals which are beyond the realms of addressing when you start to grow things more naturally. But today I'm going to explore this in a little bit of detail and answer the question that perhaps you might have and explain why you should still get your soil tested. So as I've just alluded to, I do think it is really important to test your soil no matter how you are growing. And that means even if you're growing with artificial products and chemicals, it's still super important to test your soil in just the same way it is if you are growing things naturally. And there's a number of reasons behind why this is so crucial. But before I go into that, I would just like to ask you, if you like videos that show you how to do stuff with your soil, then do consider subscribing to the channel. It's my aim to help you grow healthier and tastier food through making changes in your soil. And this channel is all about that. So if that sounds like something you like, please hit the subscribe button, follow the channel, and perhaps like the video. So first up, it is really important, no matter what you're doing with your soil, to understand some basic things about it. And these are just impossible to know from just looking at it. There are some kind of hands-on field type tests that you can do that will help you to understand things like texture, but in terms of the dynamics of the soil, perhaps even the pH, you might get an indication from plants that are growing sort of more naturally in the soil that you're in, but you'll never know exactly what kind of inherent characteristics your soil has unless you do at least a very basic test. So by basic, I mean testing the pH, perhaps the texture like I've just mentioned, soil organic matter, and certainly you should be considering having a look at major elements such as phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, etc. So first things off the bat, it's crucial to understand what you're dealing with, and if you do not measure it, you cannot manage it. Now, once you've done some simple soil tests on your garden, on your plot, allotment or field, it will present you with some data that you didn't have before. And I kind of spoke in the intro about how, well, perhaps the preconception is that there's nothing you can do with this information if you're not going to be able to treat your soil with chemicals, add elements to it, things like that. But this just isn't necessarily the case. If your soil is deficient in certain elements, then there are actually quite a large number of products that exist that are naturally based, and you can apply either to your soil or to your plant as a foliar feed to help kind of offset some of those deficiencies in the soil. One of the classics is something like magnesium, which in a high pH soil, so more alkaline soil, could perhaps be deficient, and it might be possible to top up levels in your plant. So knowing that you have low levels of magnesium in your soil is key here, but it might be possible to top up the levels in your plant through the application of a organic seaweed. So summary so far, it's really important to understand some basic information about your soil before you do anything. That means growing any plants. The other thing is, do not be under the misapprehension that just because you're growing things naturally, if there are excesses or deficiencies of certain elements in the soil, that you can do nothing about it, because there are an increasing number of natural products that can help offset this and help you to give your plants a better start in life. But the other reason why it is so important to test your soil, no matter how you're growing, and especially if you're looking to grow things more naturally, is because this initial test forms a baseline for the evolution of your soil. And what I talk about on this channel is using the best of nature, the life forces, the microbiology, the organic matter, the components of a healthy ecosystem to transport the soil from one particular level of functioning, of capability, to another. And the thing is, this takes time. And this is probably one of the reasons why most people don't think that testing their soil is of any benefit if they're growing naturally. And that's because we're conditioned to expect instant results, and the conventional way, the growing things with artificial products and chemicals, does very much feed into or satisfy this kind of requirement for instant feedback, instant results, instant gratification. But it takes time if you're growing things naturally. And I talk about this in I've talked about this in some of my other videos. Actually, it's one of the subjects which I covered in my masterclass. If you want to join my masterclass, perhaps visit my website, simonsoil.com, and keep your eyes peeled for when I'm holding the next masterclass. But I've talked about the importance of time and allowing things in a more natural way to take a little bit longer than the conventional way. Now, if you don't have that initial baseline test, you have no idea of knowing in 3, 5, 10 years time if your soil has improved, and if it has, how much better it is than it was. And when you start to get into those kinds of time frames of years of doing things in a more natural way, of building soil, of increasing organic matter, growing soil carbon, boosting microbiology, then it is indeed very, very possible to begin to transform some of those measures in the soil, the things such as phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, to affect those and change them in quite a meaningful way. And unless you have a measure at the start, you've got no means for comparison, and you will continue with this perception that it's not worth it because you're not going to be able to affect any meaningful change in the timeframes that you're preconditioned to expect. So there we go, that wraps this up. In quick summary, if you measure it, you can manage it. You need to get a baseline of your soil, even if you're not planning on doing a tremendous amount to affect the individual characteristics of it. Also, there are products available from a natural kind of toolkit that can help offset or mitigate certain deficiencies if you know about them. And then the other reason this is so crucial, taking a soil test, especially if you're growing things naturally, is to see how your soil changes over time. Unless you have a baseline measure, it's not possible to see how over the years you are taking your soil to somewhere different, seriously enhancing it, building up activity in it, and using it to enable you to grow better, tastier plants and crops. So once you've kind of got your head around this and decided, yeah, okay, I kind of see what you're saying, Simon, I should test my soil, the next question is obviously, when and how do I test my soil? Now, I've done a couple of other videos on these things in the past, but I would love to hear your views, your questions about this, and perhaps I'll do another video just designed to address those. But we'll leave that here for now. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and until then, take care.